Hello and welcome to the Untitled channel, and today I'm going to show you how to build the brand new $600 Spark version 2 gaming PC. So without further ado, what do you need to build this? Well, you're going to need a screwdriver, a pair of scissors, and that's pretty much it for the essentials. And also, don't forget, all the cables and screws you might possibly need with this computer are going to come inside the case, so don't worry about that. And as far as other accessories, I have a USB flash drive right here that will tell you how to install Windows. So actually, if you want to see how to install Windows on a USB like this, I have a video right here on screen where you can check out in the description or on card. You can check this out also at the end of the video too. And also an additional Wi-Fi adapter. This is not necessary to install Windows or even boot up the computer, but you do have the option of setting up your Wi-Fi while you're actually installing Windows. So this is just optional, but it's there. And so a link to those accessories will be in the description on top of all the parts you see right here. So I'm sure you guys have already seen the benchmarks and build video, which definitely check that out if you haven't. But here we got a full assortment of parts, including the GTX 1660, Ryzen 2200G, GEMAX GT CPU cooler, Thermaltake modular power supply, Azrael B450M Pro F, and the Cooler Master Q500L, and then finally the AdLink 256GB SSD. Oh, and yeah, 8 gigs of Team Force DDR4 memory, don't forget that. So I'm going to show you guys step by step how to build this computer, and for the most part this is going to be a normal computer to build. There's nothing to stress out about. There's maybe one thing you might want to take note of, and that is that the power supply installation is a little bit different, but I've already rehearsed it. It's not that much harder than doing like it on a other regular case. So besides that, this is going to be for the most part a pretty easy computer to build it. Anyways though, I want to give a thank you to the sponsors of this build. First of all, Cooler Master for sending over this ridiculously cool Q500L with the custom scattervolt dust filter on it. Also, I want to give thank you to AdLink for sponsoring us their super affordable 256GB M.2 drive. And I also want to thank, of course, Team Group for sponsoring also this RAM for this build too. Anyways, now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to build this computer, but first, a message from our sponsor. Always stay hydrated. But real quick before we begin, if you have any questions about this computer or how to build one in general, I would check out the tech support on the Scattervolt Discord server. You can tag them, ask them any question you want, but they are a readily available tech support for any sort of questions on building pretty much any computer you'd want. Anyways though, we're gonna start off with the motherboard, processor, RAM, and SSD. Let's go ahead and open this up. Let's see, oop, this is gonna be nice. This is what's gonna tell you where to put in your RAM, so keep that for later. Manual, you're probably gonna need that. DVD drive, or no, DVD disc, don't need that. This small little screw here, you actually might need this. We're gonna put that over here. SATA cables, you're actually not gonna need that. IO shield, definitely gonna need this. Go ahead and open her up. And here is the motherboard. Let's go ahead and take out this wrapping right here. And I'm gonna place this right here, open this guy up, put back in the wrapping, because for the most part, we are done with everything in this box. So first things first, when touching the motherboard, let's go ahead and take care of the RAM, because that's a super easy step. So here we've got 8 gigs of Team Force memory, and this is gonna be running in dual channel. So take out these two sticks, put this out of the way somewhere, and let's go ahead and pull up this sheet of paper that we found earlier. So if we want to go ahead and install 2 pieces of RAM, we're going to most likely install that on A2 and B2. And also if you look here in the fine print, actually no, never mind. So we're working with a Ryzen CPU, specifically a Raven Ridge, that being the 2200G, and we're most likely going to want to put in for a dual channel system in the A2 and B2 slots. So let's go ahead and look at the motherboard. Let's see, A2, B2. Let's go ahead and take our sticks. One thing to notice is that the threads here for our RAM are different sizes, and so are on the stick. So you want to line up the right size with the right slot. And it's okay if you put it in the wrong way. Doesn't mean your RAM stick's broken. Just go ahead, put it right in. There we go. Click it. There you go. There's that clicking sound. And let's go ahead and do the same thing. Here we go. And there you go. There's that clicking sound. So there is our RAM. And by the way, if your system happens to not boot up, or if there's any problems that could arise with your new gaming PC, definitely check the RAM. It could totally be faulty. So that is our RAM, and now let's actually go ahead and take care of the SSD. We're gonna get to the processor, don't worry. So here's our M.2 drive. We're gonna place this right here. I really like this choice actually for the build because since we're in kind of a compact case, we want to minimize the amount of cables we have. So this M.2 drive and how compact it is going to be really valuable to this system. So we're going to go ahead and place the M.2 drive here. We can place it in either of these two spots. And actually, you know what, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to install it in the Ultra M.2 slot since that's going to afford us the greatest speeds when it comes to our M.2 drive. So let's see, here is that little screw I was talking about. This is actually what's going to help hold in the M.2 drive. So we're actually going to need this. Let's go ahead, place this guy in. Now as you can see, it's kind of like flinging up and down. Don't worry. Go ahead and pull out that little screw that I showed you. There we go. Don't lose it. Put it on your screwdriver. And you know what, for this, you might need actually a smaller screwdriver, so be wary. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and change out the thread to something smaller. Which again, if you wanna get this exact screwdriver set that I have this linked in the description if you're curious. So now let's go ahead and put this guy here. There you go, right size. Push it down, line it up, and screw it in into this little hole right here. And like that, that is our storage of the system right there and there, finished. It's that easy. So now I'm gonna go ahead and change out the bit to what we're actually supposed to use, put this one away. So we've got our RAM and we got our SSD installed, and now let's go to the processor. So for this build, we're gonna go ahead and take out these two plastic pieces right here. We will not be needing these. You can basically throw them away. And for your note, again, we will not be installing the regular Ryzen CPU cooler. If you'd like to see how to do that, you can check out any of my other previous build guide videos. Whether that be my $500 one, $750 one, they're all the same. But for this build, we're messing with that nice looking Deep Cool GAMX CPU cooler. Anyways, take out these. You will not need these ever again. You can basically throw them away. Anyways, we're gonna take out this motherboard, and here is the backplate that we have for this motherboard. We're probably not gonna need this because the CPU cooler that we got already comes with a backplate. So we're just gonna put this away for now. And let's go ahead and get out the processor. And remember, we don't need the CPU cooler, so we can leave that out for later. If you want, you can totally sell it for scraps, get a little bit extra money for your rig. Pull this out. Here is our processor. Here's the Ryzen logo. Open this guy up. And I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but there is the triangle rule again with the processor right here. So I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little golden triangle right here, and you want to line that up with this triangle here in the top left of the motherboard. It'll be indented if you look real hard at it. So go ahead and open up the latch, place down the processor, and again, if you want another way to help align it, the logo is going to be parallel to this black bar right here on the motherboard. There we go. Clamp that down. So go ahead and show us for a few different angles. Here's the motherboard, here's the Ryzen logo. You can read it, it's not upside down. And you can see that's in parallel with this black bar right here. And that is it for the processor, RAM, and SSD. And now I'm going to show you how to install the CPU cooler. So now the CPU cooler. And again, I would recommend getting the CPU cooler for this system. You can of course go with the default Ryzen cooler, but given the thermals of the Q500L in this build, it would be wise to get an aftermarket CPU cooler. And also getting one of these will allow us to overclock our system to get even better gaming, streaming, and editing performance. So here we are. Oof. Be careful. Don't drop this. Here we go. So actually, when it comes to building a gaming PC, or especially if this is going to be your first one, there's a very good chance that actually the longest part that you'll have to take with your new PC is going to be the custom CPU cooler if you got one of these. So they actually take a little bit, but hopefully I'll get through this in about 5 or so minutes. So go ahead and take out your motherboard, place it flat, and here is everything we'll need. So there is the heatsink, that right there is the fan. Let's go ahead and open this up. Go ahead and pour out all the contents. This isn't that much. This is good. This is good. This is a $30 cooler and I'm really impressed. So this right here is the manual. So if you ever get stuck with this and you of course can't refer to this video, you have this big, super big, very big manual. And as you can tell right here, we're given a few different ways to install this. So if you see right here, it says AMD. This is what we're going to be referring to because this says AM4, and that is the socket of our 2200G. If you were to flip this over, it'll show you how to install the Intel way, which we don't want because this is not an Intel system. So, I'm going to make this clear. Trust the manual. It will tell you what to do. It will show you the way, like Ugandan knuckles. Okay, I'm sorry to pull that out, but I just want to emphasize, you got a manual here. Don't worry about if anything goes wrong or if you can't install this. Let's go ahead and place this out right here. Nice. So the first thing to do is to install the backplate, which is this plastic piece right here. So if we look at the motherboard right here, or the manual, right here tells you where we're going to be putting in the holes, which actually, it kind of gives you a little zoomed in demonstration right here. We want to put it on the outside, which will then push to the inside. So if you ever have trouble of getting these things out, say if you put it in the wrong way, you can go ahead and just get your screwdriver and kind of just like press into it and it'll come out. You just press it back in, of course, once you get in the right spot. So no need to worry if you put these in the wrong spot, don't stress out. Just grab a screwdriver, put it in, push it out, put it in the right spot. So now that we have this correctly installed, we're gonna flip it over, take out our motherboard, put the backplate on the floor, line it up with the threads, which they are, where are you guys? There you go. So now as you can tell on video, if you can see, we can actually see the actual threads poking through the motherboard holes. So now let's go ahead and start screwing in these silver bolts. Like I said, guys, CPU cooler is going to be, a custom aftermarket CPU cooler is usually the longest part of any PC build. There you go. That is in. So the backplate is all the way in. Good stuff. Now let's go ahead and continue the manual. So here on step 3, we're gonna go ahead and take this little slip here. This is our thermal paste. Go ahead and cut it out at the tip, boom. And go ahead and just squeeze it out onto the CPU. Nothing too bad. And I believe you should aim to use everything inside this packet. Yeah, right there. So there's my glob. You could rate it 1 out of 10 in the comment section. Let me know. So that is our glob, and now let's go ahead and put on the actual block. So here is our heatsink, and this cable right here is an RGB cable. This is what's gonna show those cool RGB light up colors whenever we turn on our system with the CPU cooler. So we're gonna put that right there for now. I'm gonna aim that to be, yeah, right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just press this down. There you go. Squish it. Guys, I did another oopsie. Don't forget to take this off. There we go. And just to fight back, we're gonna go ahead and squeeze out the rest of this, see if we have any left. We should still have enough thermal paste after that little mistake. Go ahead and put this back on. Just press it all the way in. You can feel the thermal paste spreading out, align it. And now let's go ahead and find the right prong to use to mount this onto that custom backplate. So here we're gonna need a number 5. So a number 5 is gonna be the longer one. So grab the 2 long prongs right here. And we're gonna go ahead and line this first one. Let's see. Up. There we go. Just gonna kind of force your way into it. It's okay if the heatsink moves around a little bit. Also, to put these in, you want to lightly screw in each side first, and don't screw it in all the way. We just want it to be in there. So now that it's in, let's go ahead and align that hole. Okay, that is in. And now let's get the other side, which for the moment, can we move this guy, move this cable? Looks like we can't, so we're just gonna have to kind of go around this cable right here. Oh, that's easy. You might need to kind of bend the screws a little bit into the actual threads. They're a little bit wider than what they should be. That's kind of normal with most CPU coolers and how you mount them to the motherboard. So don't freak out. So now it is mostly secured. So to finish it off, we're just gonna go ahead and screw in the other side equally. We're gonna go ahead and do the cross method. I think it's a good thing that you guys are seeing my mistakes. That way you don't repeat them. Okay. Take your time. Screw them all the way in individually. You want to make sure you have equal pressure, especially with a custom CPU like this. Because if you don't have equal pressure amongst your 4 screws, then your motherboard could potentially bend. And you don't want that. Okay, we're nearing the end of tightening each of these to their full extent. There we go. Tighten this one all the way. Yup. And yup. This is on there. So finally, after much messing around with this custom CPU cooler from from Deepcool, we can do the magic trick test. So if you can do this with your motherboard, then that means you are in. However, I believe there's a few more screws to go. Yeah, we got 2 little screws right here. Let's find those. They are right here. Can we fit that on? Now we're gonna need a smaller bit. Take these 2 final screws, put them in here. There we go. And now our CPU cooler properly installed. So there's actually one more final thing we gotta do. We of course have to put the fan onto the actual block right here. So we're gonna wanna go ahead and put it like this. So the actual logo is facing the RAM here on the fan. And so to actually put this in, what you're gonna wanna do is go to this back slot right here on the fan, right here. And you wanna hook this to inside. And then around here on the CPU cooler, you're gonna wanna kind of pull back and put these two notches inside the actual heatsink. So it kind of fits nice and easily right here. So now let's do that for the other side. Go ahead, latch the two pins right here. And then pull this around and get it all the way in there. It's gonna touch the heatsink, of course. Kind of get it right into place. And like that, we have the fan installed. So it's actually hooked into the heatsink. You don't screw it in. So now with that out of the way, let's see, anything else we're missing? We're gonna leave that for later. We're gonna leave this for later. So if you're wondering, we have an assortment of cables right here. So here we have this 4-pin looking connector right here. This is your actual fan connector. Let's go ahead and put this right here into the CPU fan header on our motherboard. So that way the fan will start spinning up. And then after that, this is our RGB connector for the fan. Now as you can see, there's two different ports right here, and that's for a reason. This can either be daisy chained with other RGB fans or be standalone. So if you wanted to hook this up directly into the motherboard, so say if you weren't interested in getting the other fans for this case, what you would do is that you grab this adapter, you'd unscrew it, and you see right here where you have like this kind of, like, all I can say is like a 4-pin Lego looking connector with like these prongs right here. You want to put that into this. And it snaps right in. And then this 4-pin connector right here, which is gonna be your RGB for the CPU cooler, you're gonna wanna put that right here in this 4 white pin connector. And that's just for the fan. So you see this other cable right here? This is the RGB connector for the actual heatsink. So remember that little daisy chain connector I was talking about? You're gonna wanna hook that up right here. So with all of this right here, we can put it here in this 4-pin motherboard RGB connector spot. However, I will not be doing that for this tutorial because I'm dealing with 4 other RGB fans which come with their own respective RGB controllers. So I'm gonna do my own little cable management to make it look nice, since there's gonna be like a fan header and then an RGB header. But if you aren't gonna get those 4 RGB fans, what I have right here, where you daisy chain the 2 RGB connectors from the fan and the heatsink, and to this adapter right here, where you have these 4 holes, you wanna go ahead and route this behind the case to make it look nice, and then plug it right here. And that will allow you to have RGB for your PC, at least for the heatsink, without having to like use an external adapter. You can control it from the motherboard. So if you are going to be getting those 4 spare deep cool fans that I was showing earlier, you don't need this. This is to allow you to control the RGB without an RGB header, like if your motherboard didn't have one, but we already have one, so you don't need this. And that is the CPU cooler all the way installed. So now let's put it inside the case, put in the power supply, put in the graphics card, and then start hooking everything up. So now let's go ahead and install the power supply. So to do that, we're gonna go ahead and take off this mesh panel. And as you can see right here, there are 4 screws. Let's take out each of those screws. And you're gonna hear something funny here in a second. I got a magic trick for you. I want to make something fall. There you go, there's the magic trick. So what just fell in the case? Well, let's go ahead and open up the side panel check that out. Here we are. And like I said earlier, all of the screws and anything you possibly want with this case do come inside. I just took it out already. And here is the power supply adapter. So we're gonna be needing this. So kind of to give you an idea of what we're gonna be doing, what we just unscrewed, as you can tell here from my GoPro, is a vertical mount for our power supply. So it was right here originally in the case, but fell down obviously. So with this out, we're gonna go ahead and install the power supply into this and then put it back into the case. So let's put this guy out of the box. Here we go. Yup. Manual, don't need that other thing. Now, I specifically chose a semi-modular power supply, or if you wanted to choose your own power supply, go with a modular one. Because as you can tell, all we have right here is just one cable, and this is the motherboard and CPU connector. Or never mind, it's just the motherboard. So this is modular, which means you can put the cables that you want in this PC into the power supply, so you don't have that huge bulk of cables to deal with, which is going to be smart for this compact computer. Put that right there. Are we given any screws? Here's our cable, we're gonna need that. And actually we are given some power supply screws, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use them since they're right here. Here's our power cable. Here are some zip ties, more zip ties. And here's our 4 power supply screws. And right here in this nice little leather bag, we're given our PCI connectors, SATA connectors, anything like that. Though if I'm right, the GTX 660, I believe, doesn't use a PCI power connector. Fairly certain. If it does, then correct me. Which, if that's the case, then all we're gonna need is the CPU power cable. Scissors. However, though, important thing to note, we're gonna have some fan headers in the back of this computer. So I would actually leave this on deck just in case you need to use any extra connectors or anything like that. But for the most part, we're going to need, where is it? This is your PCI power. And this is, does it say? No? Oh, okay, I see what's going on. Oh, never mind, I was right. The CPU power cable already comes with the power supply. So anyways, let's go ahead and set all these cables in this nice little leather bag aside for the moment. So to install this, the bracket is going to be facing this way into the case. And we want the fan going out of the case. We don't want hot air from the power supply pushing into our CPU cooler. That would be bad. So go ahead and take your power supply. Kind of do that. So here's the fan. And there's the shroud over it. So all you gotta do now is grab your 4 power supply screws. Open the baggie up, pull them out. And take these and just start screwing it in, just as if you were gonna put it inside a regular case. So right here are our 4 screws. And before we put this inside the case, we're given this little cable right here. This is like an extender for your power supply cable. So we're gonna go ahead and I'll leave this in the open switch. I'm not gonna turn it to the line. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this right here, plug it in before we actually mount it inside the case. Pretty sure there's headroom to flip the switch once we get it all the way in here. finesse it in there. And you're gonna wanna find the 4 threads that you were just messing with. There we go. So once you got it aligned, grab those 4 screws that you took out. This is where a magnetic screwdriver really comes in handy, because it acts as like you got a second person with you. Just go ahead and line it up. And I need to kind of press this into the case too. Here we go. Woo! All right, we got it. So kind of to give you an idea, whenever you actually look at the case right here, remember where you took out the screws? You can kind of see like, there's a little like rim around it. But this will help you kind of get an idea of where the power supply mount originally was. So just keep that in mind. But let's go ahead and just screw in everything. This part's gonna be easy peasy. And the good thing is that we already have the power supply cable in there. Okay, that is all the way on there. Slap back on the dust filter. And we have access up here. If you can hear this. We can flip on and off the power supply switch. So right here is what your power supply should look like. It's kind of neatly tucked up there. It's kind of nice. So the power supply is in. Let's go ahead and put in the motherboard. It's kind of neatly tucked up there. It's kind of nice. So the power supply is in. Let's go ahead and put in the motherboard. So while we're at it, let's go ahead and take out this backside panel. This will help us do some mild cable management with power supply cables, and for later on installing all of those fans and getting all the pretty RGB correctly. And I like how these are rubber too, that's kind of nice. There we are. Take that out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get right to threading all of these power supply cables that we have, which so far are just the CPU and the motherboard, through one of the grommets here. I'm gonna put that right here. And despite the Q500L size, you can still do some, there's still a pretty thick amount of room back here to do some cable management. Gonna lay that down for right now. Gonna tilt this over. Let's get somewhat of a solid platform. I know this isn't flat, but we need something that's just flat enough to fit in the motherboard. But before we actually put it in, don't forget to put in your front I/O connector. You're gonna need this. So here in your I/O shield, you're given a part along the rim that sticks out, and the other side is kind of like pressed in. So what you want is take your case. I'll show you guys right here. Take your case, and you're going to want to orient your I/O shield to fit where your motherboard is going to be oriented. So if you look along here, the actual audio ports are going to be at the bottom. So go ahead and take the side that's sticking out, go through the case. Like that. Just press through. There we go. Just gonna want to snap it into place. So you can see that part that's sticking out is now kind of outside the case. That's what we want. Because if you're to actually flip it around, you can see that there's some of these like prongs sticking out on the back of the I/O shield. That's to actually kind of like hold in your I/O ports, kind of. So if that were the other way, then it just looked really stupid, and that means you didn't get it right. But it's okay, you can always mess around with it. So now with that out of the way, let's put in the motherboard. But before we do that, there's so many but befores. Let's go ahead and get the right screws that we would need. So right here is the correct screw. It's kind of a small screw. It's got a little outline around it. This is for actually putting in the motherboard. And really, if you can't actually distinguish what specific screw this is, just kind of pull out all the screws and see which one actually fits into the standoffs. Because it's okay, if one screw doesn't fit or if it's not the right thread size, you can just choose another, but that's the right one if you guys can tell what it is on video. But before we even get to that, there's so many but befores. We need to reconfigure the standoffs. So out of this whole bulk of black screws and stuff, we have this little silver piece right here. And you may be asking, what is this for? Well, this is a standoff unscrewer. Because as you can tell, our motherboard here is micro ATX size. But in the case, by default, it is set at ATX. Because you see these standoffs down here, our motherboard is not going to be reaching that because it already has its own set of standoffs for its size, of course. So all we're going to do is go down to one of these standoffs and unscrew it. We just kind of put that on there, take it out. Not all the way. There we go. And right here, we're given two holes. You're going to want to go with the bottom one. Kind of, you could maybe hand screw this into place. Gotta get it right. Yep. Place this guy on there carefully and screw it all the way in. You're going to do your best you can to make sure that the standoff is straight. So usually screwing it all the way will kind of realign it to be like that. So there's one of our standoffs. Let's see, are we missing? Yep, we got one right here in this corner. Let's not forget about it. So let's grab this one down here in the bottom corner. Ooh. Here's our standoff. Let's go ahead and hand screw it in just a little bit right here. Okay. Let's put the adapter on. Screw it in all the way. Is it straight up? Looks like it. Let's make sure we got it in all the way. Yep, that is all the way in. And let's double check. We got this standoff covered. We got that standoff covered. We have that standoff. Yep, the rest should be good. So now that we have the correct standoffs, now we can finally put in the motherboard. So go ahead and grab it by the heatsink. You're gonna wanna kinda Tetris your way into there. Man, this PC is gonna have so many fans. It's okay if there's some scratching. Motherboards are built to be a little bit tough. And you know what? I'm actually gonna make a smart move right here. Yeah. So before I completely screw it all the way in, I'm gonna first of all put it into place. Come around here. Whenever you see the ports touching the I/O shield, that means it's all the way in. And if you align it, you can see the threads. And you can actually start screwing them in. But before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and grab these pre-existing cables from our CPU cooler. Let's see, is that? Yep. And I'm gonna go ahead and just put these through the back side of the case. Because I don't wanna deal with them later on. It's gonna be for the final part of the rig. So if we were to let's not stand it up actually. Let's go ahead and start screwing in the motherboard. So a brief amount of time has passed, and at this point you guys should have screwed in the motherboard. And now actually we're at the point to where we can go ahead and start plugging in our front IO connectors and our power connectors, and do that before the graphics card, of course. And yes, I did get a haircut. This is being filmed on a different day, but we still got a PC to build. So the first connectors I'm gonna deal with first are the front IO connectors. So again, if you have any doubts on what connectors are what and where does it go on the motherboard, refer to the manual. So actually, let's go ahead and check this out right now. Right here on 2.6, this is where all of our header connectors are gonna be. So right here is actually our front panel header. And there's some other headers. And all these are laid out here at the beginning of the manual. You can see all these different numbers right here below all these different connectors. You turn the page here in the manual, it'll tell you what each of these things are, and you can correlate that to here with all these individual connectors. So any information you need on what goes to where and what pins do you do what with, always refer to the manual. It'll tell you. There's nothing complicated, just follow it. Don't worry. But for the most part, I'm gonna leave this right here so I can have it on me. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the USB 3.0 connector first. So that is going to be this connector right here. It's not blue this time, which is unfortunate, but it's like this thick kind of connector right here. It takes in 2 cables, and actually, as a matter of fact, it says USB 3.0 right here on the cable itself. So let's take this, put it around here, flip it, and there's a little notch here at the top, so I'm gonna align that with the cut-in notch here on the connector. Plug it in, kaboom. We got that, so that's our USB 3.0 header. I'm gonna go ahead and route this around, make it a little bit clean. Now next we have HD audio. It says it right here, and this is gonna be going over on this side of the motherboard. So I'm going to route it underneath, and I'm gonna put this guy right here. There we are. That's that, taken care of. Here is our front IO connector right here. So there's a bunch of different names. We have HDD LED, reset switch, power LED plus, power LED minus. Let's look at the manual. We can see that, here on the manual that these are where the individual cables will go on the connector. So the power LEDs are going to be at the top left, the HDD LEDs are going to be the bottom left, the reset switch is going to be on the right bottom, and the power switch is going to be at the very top right. Just like Legos, folks. Just follow the instructions. Good. Power LED plus and minus. So I'll put this one right here. Put this one right here. And HDD LED goes right. So there you go, just take your time with the front panel connectors. They're small, so just be delicate with them. And if you run into any issues, say booting up your computer for the first time, the first thing I would do is go ahead and check your front panel connectors and see if your power switch are on the right pins. Okay, so that's all the front I/O connectors, and we're gonna finish out with the power. And this really should be it. We don't have any physical SSDs or hard drives, so we don't need any SATA power. And I believe our GTX 1660 does not have any power connectors. So all we need really are just gonna have to be our CPU power and motherboard power. So this is gonna be incredibly easy as far as power goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and route the power through the top left. Here we go, we got a spot right here. And oh yeah, and by the way, don't forget that the actual labels are on the cable themselves. So if you forget what each one is, they have names on them. And the motherboard power, we're gonna thread into this one right up here. And so we're gonna flip this one around first and foremost. Bring this around, squish it. And there we are. So we have everything hooked up. Yeah. I wonder how close we are to booting. Okay, so we have the front I/O connectors hooked up. We have the power cables as far as we need hooked up. And I'm gonna go ahead and take this next segment, and before we actually boot up the computer, I'm gonna do the last thing that this computer needs, which is installing our 4 additional fans and hooking up the RGB connectors for our CPU cooler and CPU block. Here's a box full of stuff. And, oh, is this a little manual? It looks like it is. Here is the user guide for how to use the fans. Here's what's included. Here are the fans. Here's a fan hub and an RGB extension cable. We're actually gonna be needing this. And as far as the fan hub, we're gonna be needing this too because we're gonna be dealing with a lot of fans. And actually, since this covers up to 4, that's gonna be the perfect amount for the 4 fans we're gonna put on the bottom and on the top of the case. So we'll only need one of these. That's how to install it. That's where to put in your front fan connector, which is just another fan header on your motherboard. It basically makes multiple fan headers just out of one big thing. And then here's our RGB cable. Let's see, same thing on the back. Yep, just in a different language. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and start off with these 3 fans first. I got an extra pack just for the 4th one. Okay, so this is how to install the fans. And something to point out is that once you know how to install one of these, you can install all of them. It's really not that hard. So specifically with these fans, since they're RGB, you'll notice that there's 2 different cables hooked up to these fans. There's one with just one connector that looks like a 4-pin connector. This is your fan header. This is what's actually gonna tell the fan to turn on and off. And then here in this other cable, which has 2 connectors attached to it, these are your RGB connectors. One of them is a male and one of them is a female. And if you'll notice, there's a reason why there's 2 of these, and that's because with the purpose of this build, we can actually daisy chain all of the RGB connectors from all these fans and devices by just doing this, right? Just hook them all up together, putting the male from this one into another female of another fan or whatever else in the case. And then we can hook all of it up with this provided connector from the fans box, or actually we can reuse the one that we have from the CPU cooler. And with this connector right here, we'll actually put it into the motherboard. And as you can see, there's a female on it, so that'll just be the very last female of all of our fan connectors and RGB stuff. So really, RGB is not hard, is what I'm trying to say. It's like a Lego set, just follow the instructions. So I went ahead and installed one fan already, but just kind of give you an idea of what to do. go ahead and first grab your cables. You're going to be routing through the back of the case, because if you screw on your fan and you didn't do the pre-cable management for the fan, it could get bundled up and stuck inside your case, and like you wouldn't be able to reach it. So just go ahead and eliminate the hassle of having to take out your fan and do that, and just do it first try. So let's get one of these top fans. Let's get our cable routing hole. We're going to use this part up here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the fans first. Not the fans, get the cables first. There you go, there's one. Here's two. And bring this guy up. Now remember, you want to take off the top dust panel before you do any of this. But aside from that, go ahead and get the fan into place. And to actually screw this fan in, you're going to want to check out this plastic bag that was provided in the actual fan box. These are the 4 screws you're going to need to actually mount this to the case. So yep, I'm just going to let that rest. Going to pour these out. And the cool thing with the Q500L, not Q500, the Q500L is that you can mount this fan to wherever you want according to one of these holes. Though there are suggested holes that you should actually mount the fan into. So I want to find one of those real quick. All right, I found a set that has all of the holes lined up with the case. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start screwing in the fan. But now, if you can actually tell, you can't see this right now, but there's actually some holes on the top of this case that have a little outline on the inside of them. Those holes are meant for actually if you wanted to put the power supply somewhere else in the case, because the actual holes that we used for this are not the same as the fans we're installing right now, because the thread size is different. And likewise, it would be smart to do the cross method for installing these fans. You don't want to super tighten up one end and have the others kind of go along with it. I would equally tighten them up as you go along, just so that you can remove any sort of potential, oops, put that in the wrong hole. I would just do that just so you remove any sort of potential rattling with your fans if there's unequal pressure among it and the case. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and apply equal pressure to each screw. Okay, so that is how you install a fan, and once you're done with that, place the dust filter back on top. And since this case is literally a square, you can go ahead and do exactly what we did for the top of the case on the bottom of the case for the fans. But of course, you'd actually have to remove this dust filter. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and get those 2 other fans, and then we'll put in the graphics card and boot up the system. Or actually, before we do that, let me show you how to route all the RGB cables in a nice and hopefully clean manner. Okay, so I went ahead and installed the 3 other remaining fans. Just had to take off the dust filter from the bottom, put the 2 on, and of course, before I did any of that, reroute the cables through the case, which now leaves us with this cableness. Now, if we didn't even have the fans, all these little cables right here, we don't have to worry about it. This would be pretty clean on its own, but let's go ahead and clean this up and show you guys how to route everything. So in the boxes here for the fans, you were given 2 things. You were given, and I touched on this before, this 12 volt motherboard RGB header to female RGB header. You're gonna need this. And you're also given a single fan controller which can hold the 4 fans, which is the exact amount we have. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take off this white strip. This is an adhesive to let it stick to the case. And I'm gonna put this somewhere. Actually, first before I do that, I'm gonna route this cable through the case. See where's a convenient place to put this. Is that a fan? Yep. There's one here at the bottom. Go ahead and use this one. Okay, got that. So I went ahead and plugged something into the channel fan 2 slot right there. So now I have this dangling, so I'm gonna go ahead and peel this off. All right, and let me get an idea of how I wanna do this. So I have fans right there and fans right here. I'm gonna put this up here at the top. See how that works out. All right, and now let's go ahead and plug in every single one of these fans that we just put in into this fan header, which is of course hooked up to a single fan port on the motherboard. Cool. So we went ahead and hooked up all of our fans here to the fan header right there in the middle. I placed it right here, don't put it up there. I don't know why I did that, because I forgot I had bottom fans in the case. So now we're given a whole bunch of these RGB cables. Here's an RGB cable for the CPU block up here. We're given a few, here's another one for the CPU cooler fan. Here's another one probably for the case fan, and another one for the case fan. And then these two are for the bottom fans. So we have a total of 6 different RGB connectors. So let's go ahead and start off with this. So the first RGB header we should use should be the CPU block RGB header, because there is no female adapter on this. So let's start the chain with this, and let's follow it up with what I'm fairly certain is the CPU cooler fan RGB header. So let's go ahead and put the male from the CPU block, the heatsink, into the female of the CPU cooler fan. And now we have a new male connector to work with. So let's continue daisy chaining that with the top fans. So we're gonna do this. Actually, let's get you. Daisy chain, get another one from the top. Daisy chain. So see, we've already got a lot of stuff connected, and we're still on one actual male RGB header. So this is another fan. Let's put this one in here. All right, we got more cables, but now we got this. So all that's left are the, oh, I guess I already did one of the bottom ones. And let's do this final one. Daisy chain this final connector, and once we get it in, there we go. All right, we have all of our RGB connections now into one single continuous cable. Just gotta daisy chain them. So what you're finally gonna do is you're gonna grab this adapter that was given in the box with the fans that has the 12-volt RGB motherboard header. Go ahead and plug in this final male into the female, and take this 12-volt, we're gonna route it around here, and we're gonna put it where the 12-volt header is for our motherboard, which is gonna be back here. I'll go ahead and flip around the case so you guys can see where I'm putting it. Here we go, and here's that 12-volt connector I was talking about, and it's gonna go right here on this little white connector on our motherboard. So go ahead. First of all, read what's on the motherboard, because there's specific pins that go in specific places. So real quick, let's get the manual. Let's go ahead and go back to the section with the front pin connectors. Where's our RGB one? RGB, yes. RGB header right here. There's our RGB header. So it begins with 12 volt. Then G, then R, and then B. So let's go ahead and check our connector here. So I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's actually some labeling right here. So this right here at the very far right says 12 volt, and then G, and then R, and then B. So the leftmost side of the motherboard has the 12 volt, so let's go ahead and align this correctly. There you go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do RGB. So now with that out of the way, with all the fans installed, all the RGB hooked up, all of the fans hooked up, let's complete the build by putting in the graphics card and finally booting up the system. But firstly, before we get this, let's go ahead and take out the PCI slots that we do not need, because we'll need an opening for our graphics card. So let's go ahead and take this out. All right, that's exposed. Let's go ahead and go around here. We're gonna be plugging our graphics card here in this top slot. So that's the second one down, so we need to take out these two. Okay, so now that we have our correct open PCI slots, let's finally take out the best part of the build and insert in graphics card. Here we go. I like this 1660 because it has a backplate, which is a nice little touch for a budget graphics card like this. Let me go ahead and put this off to the side. Remove this plastic cover right here. And let's see. Oh, darn it. There is a power connector on this graphics card. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull out that that little case with all of our power supply cables. And I'm gonna go ahead and get a PCI cable, hook it up to the power supply, route it around, and get a little spot for this 1660. So the actual cable you need is this red bright cable. It says PCIe here. This is what we're gonna need for this graphics card. Here we go. So the thick side with no PCI cables that go off. This solid connector is going to be going into the power supply. So let's go ahead and check this out. It's going to go into one of the red slots. So let's do this back one. Doesn't matter which one you put in. All right. Go ahead and put this one back around here, along with all of our other power supply cables, and yup, get that around. And finally, let's make a little opening here. This is where our our graphics card cable is gonna be. Now, let's get our graphics card. Open up this tab right here. Click that open, yup. And just insert in the graphics card. There we are. Let's go ahead and get our power cable, bring it around here. So let's go ahead and hook in the connector right here. Twist it around. Plug it in here through the top. Got a little dangling cable right there. Okay, so there's actually one final thing you gotta, well, actually besides we do that, we need to go ahead and quickly screw back in the PCI bracket of the graphics card into the case. Okay, that is in. Okay, so we have the graphics card plugged in, and there's one final thing actually we gotta do. Don't forget this. So as you can see right here, we have a spare fan header for our included case fans. And actually right there, I don't know if you can tell, there's a 4-pin fan header for case fans just like this. So final thing we're gonna do, bring this down, put it in here. So you got that in the right way. Okay, and now we're finally ready to boot up the computer. Okay, so by this point you should have everything hooked up, and now let's see if it actually works. So make sure to change the switch on the power supply from the circle to the line, which you can do right here. Got that little snap. And remember, since the power supply is over there and we connected that extender cable to it, the actual cable from our power supply box that we're gonna plug into the computer is gonna go here in the top left. Can't miss it. So that is in, and already this is actually a good sign. The keyboard we have plugged into the front of the case actually lit up, so that means there's being power delivered right now. And so we have that, and don't forget, here's our USB flash drive to install Windows. Again, there is a tutorial video linked in the description, as well as carded on the screen somewhere here, to show you how you can install your own version of Windows onto a flash drive similar to this. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug this into the back of the case, into one of the USB, I'm gonna do 2.0. I'm gonna do a 2.0 slot this time. And of course we have our monitor, and I'm gonna go ahead and use this DisplayPort connector to display our graphics card out to the monitor. So we're gonna go ahead and take this out. All right, that is in. And let's see if it works. 3, 2, 1. Whoa, all the lights turned on, yo. But do we get a signal? Do we get a signal? Come on. Everything lights up beautifully. Come on. Come on, let's see it. Maybe just gotta give it a sec, probably. Oh, there we are. We have successfully booted up another budget gaming PC. Just gotta give it a sec. Okay, it's going, and it looks like now we're gonna go ahead and install Windows actually. Wow, man, the lights, dude, the RGB lights are just kicking it right now. Yep, there's the Windows logo. That shows that it's going right to our USB flash drive. So at this point, you basically made it. I mean, from here on out, it's incredibly simple. You just install Windows. I mean, I've done this at least 5 other times on my other budget gaming computers, but I'll go ahead and show it to you guys again on how to do this. It's really easy. So to do this last part, English, yep, English, US, next, install now, yep. Nothing, no trickery here. You're just installing Windows. All right, so we don't have a key, but don't worry. We're gonna click I don't have a product key, and guess what? It's still gonna let you install Windows. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to go with Windows 10 Pro. Again, there's no difference between Windows 10 Home and Windows 10 Pro when it comes to your gaming experience. I'm only doing it because I think there's a sponsor who might want me to show how to activate Windows 10 Pro on this gaming computer, so I'm gonna go with it. And this is just, you know, terms and agreement. Hit the next. Now, we're going to be doing a custom install in Windows because this is a new computer. We're not upgrading because there's no Windows on here. And there is our M.2 drive. There's 238 gigs. That's to be expected with formatting. Okay, and that looks good. So let's hit next. That's the drive we're going to install Windows on. And in a very short amount of time, we're going to get right to installing Windows. And there we are. So there you have it. That is how to build a $600 gaming PC, specifically Spark version 2. And as you saw, yeah, there was a lot. I mean, probably the only difficult thing really was the CPU cooler because I screwed up on the backplate like 2 times. But I mean, as long as you refer to the photo that I showed you, you should know how to do it. But for the most part, despite the different layout of this case and the smaller size, it's not that much harder to build it. Now, yes, there is a monstrosity of cables right here that we'll have to deal with later, but for the most part, thanks to all those zip ties that were provided to us in that little bag that was in the case, we can go ahead and wrap out all these RGB cables, all the fan cables, and even the power cables and like shove them to the sides of the case and make this look neat. And you'll see it in the full build guide video, of course. But what I'm most proud about is 1, everything turns on. it displays, it's installing Windows, and that all the RGB is working off of that single 12-volt header on the motherboard, just by powering up the CPU cooler, the CPU fan, and the 4 fans that we got going on right now inside this computer. So for the most part, I'm very impressed. So I'm excited to make the build video on this and test out all those cool games. Fallout 76 is free for this week, so screw it, I'm gonna test it. But anyways, that is all that we have today for the build guide tutorial. So if you enjoy these, definitely subscribe to the Scatterable channel. We always make these just for you new people who are completely clueless on how to build a computer. Though, I'm gonna put this out there, once you know how to build a single computer, you know how to build pretty much any other one you'd run into. All these install basically the same way, so especially with this computer, it's gonna teach you how to install RGB, a bunch of fans, and of course the mainstays of a computer like the power supply, motherboard, and even a custom CPU cooler and all that jazz. Anyways, that is it for today's video, and we are we're already getting, okay, well, you basically made it. So anyways, that is it for today's tutorial video. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the Scatterable channel, signing out.